Right, we're on the very last stop on our journey to explore the 4 characteristics of all living things. And in this slide, we're going to talk about how all living things reproduce. There are 2 different ways that organisms can reproduce. One is asexual reproduction. That's reproduction accomplished by an individual organism. So there are some single-celled organisms that can simply organize their genetic material within themselves and then just split into 2 copies that are exactly like one another. In fact, technically, all cells in your body are able to reproduce asexually as they copy themselves and then split apart. So cells are able to do this even if the whole organism isn't reproducing. There's other methods of asexual reproduction as well, like starfish. If you cut a starfish into 2 pieces, each piece will individually regrow back into a starfish, and you'll have 2 copies of the same organism. The same is true of a lot of plants. If you cut the root system of a plant into 2 pieces, a lot of times those 2 plants with the 2 pieces will grow into separate plants, and you'll have 2 genetic copies of the same plant, but they're separate from each other. That's asexual reproduction. Sexual reproduction requires 2 organisms, okay? And most of the time, I think when people think of reproduction, this is the type of reproduction they think of. 2 organisms that exchange genetic material with each other and then create a copy of the organisms that has some characteristics of one parent and some characteristics of the other parent. Inheritance is also part of reproduction. The inheritance is the process by which characteristics are transmitted from parents to offspring. So in sexual reproduction, the child organism gets some characteristics from the parent, from each parent. And in asexual reproduction, the organism gets all of the characteristics. The daughter organism gets all of the characteristics from the parent organism, right? So asexual reproduction and sexual reproduction work very differently when it comes to mixing traits. Asexual reproduction results in an exact copy of inherited traits. Sexual reproduction actually mixes traits, and that's what inheritance is all about. And then finally, mutation is important to talk about in reproduction as well, because sometimes there's abrupt and marked changes to DNA corresponding to things that happen as DNA is reproduced that don't happen correctly. So we end up with a change in the daughter DNA compared to parent DNA. Mutations are another important part of reproduction, though, because they result in diversity. All of these things tend to trend toward more diversity in organisms. Asexual reproduction does not, but sometimes when organisms asexually reproduce, there's mutations. And then sexual reproduction always trends toward more diversity because organisms share traits, and that's all based on inheritance, what traits the daughter organism inherits.